So, where are you from?
I was originally born and raised in New York. So I joined the Army in 1984, and I stayed active duty from 1984 to 1987. And then when I got out in 87, I moved to Houston, where I began my law enforcement career.
Okay. And what did you do in the Army?
In the Army, I was a cook. I was a cook my whole career, my whole 27-year career. I recently retired, well, not recently, 12 years ago, I retired from the Army Reserve in 2011 as the Chief Warrant Officer 3, but I spent my whole career doing logistics and food service operations.
What's been your career path in law enforcement?
Well, I started off working, when I got out the Army in 87, I went to the unemployment office in Houston and I saw a flyer for Texas Department of Corrections. Back then it was Texas Department of Corrections. So I needed a job, I needed health insurance for my wife and I and my son. So I did that. So I was in Huntsville for 3 years. And while I was trying to learn the difference between law enforcement in Texas and law enforcement on the East Coast, I found out they had something called the Sheriff's Department. Because in New York, we don't have the Sheriff's Department. So I joined the Harris County Sheriff's Department, and I did that for about 9 months. But then I realized that in order to go on to become a deputy sheriff, you have to wait like 3 years before you go to the academy. So in 1991, the Houston Police Department opened up the academy to military veterans, because at the time I didn't have enough college hours to join the HPD. So in May 1991, I joined the police department as one of the first military veteran cadets in HPD history. And so there I began my 29-year career with HPD. And while HPD as an officer, I worked patrol. I was a gang tactical officer, and I worked 14 years undercover narcotics in Houston. So after 17 years, I decided to promote. So I promoted to sergeant, and the path began again where I started working patrol. I worked the jail division. Everybody has to do a rotation in the jail, new sergeants. I did that night shift for a little over a year. Then I worked internal affairs. So I did internal affairs, but I was assigned to a specialized unit where we targeted corrupt police officers and corrupt city employees. So that was a very good assignment where I worked with the FBI, targeting bad employees, doing drug rips, robbing people, traffic stops, things like that. So we did that. I did that for about 3 years. Then I went back to narcotics as a sergeant. So I decided to promote to lieutenant, and I was a tactical lieutenant for the Southeast Patrol Division. So I had tactical operations on the southeast part of town. And then I went to Robbery Division for about 9 months. And then they brought me back to IED, back to the same squad when I was a sergeant as. So I was the lieutenant over the proactive unit in the Internal Affairs Division. Again, targeting bad employees, criminal employees. Then I decided to take the commander's test, and I promoted to the rank of commander, and I was appointed the commander of the gang division for all of Houston. So we were part of a task force. We worked at the Texas Anti-Gang Center. And then Chief Acevedo appointed me an assistant chief. And I first started working as assistant chief over training, recruiting, psychological service, human resources, all the administrative sides of police, executive police, law enforcement. And that's where I learned how to handle the administration's budget. So it was a task I didn't want, but in the end, it really prepared me for my role as a future police chief. So I like that assignment. And then after about 2 years, he transferred me over to patrol operations. So I was a assistant chief of patrol operations, north and northwest Houston. So I had about 1,100 officers at about 300 square miles under my command. So, and then in 2020, the opportunity came up to be the chief of police for the Houston Independent School District. And that's where I learned how to be a chief of police for the school-based law enforcement, which is completely different from what I was used to as a municipal police chief. There we will focus on, in municipal policing, you focus on reducing crime by arresting people and work with the community to decrease crime. But in school-based law enforcement, you focus on helping the kids and trying to find ways not to put them in jail. So we had to work with school administrators and work with community members to recognize that all adolescent behavior is not criminal. So I had a learning curve in that, but I think it was a great assignment and prepared me for this assignment actually. So here I am now, 33 years later, and here in Killeen as the chief of police. I'm happy to be here.
And your experience in the military brings a unique perspective that a lot of officers and civilians don't understand when it comes to dealing with trauma and other things that soldiers have to deal with. Is that something that you want to, help some of your officers understand when approaching them? Because it is a unique approach.
It sure is, because a lot of our police force consists about, I think we have about 65-70% of our officers are prior military veterans, whether it's Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, whatever. And a lot of them have been deployed. You know, the country has been at war for the last 20 plus years. So we have a lot of veterans that serve in the Killeen Police Department. And sometimes those veterans have some type of PTSD issues. So it's something we have to be very aware of. One thing we started in HPD is that we started a peer support program, and we added a military reintegration program where if you were deployed overseas and when you come back, we don't immediately stick you back on the streets because we don't know what type of trauma you witnessed while you were deployed. So that way we ease you back into the police department and try to get rid of that military service obligation, the way of thinking you had when you were, deployed overseas. And that program was very successful. That's something I'd like to consider bringing back here to the KPD, because like I said, over 65-70% of our members, are prior military veterans with deployment experience. So that's very important to me to make sure that they're sound mind and body to interact with our citizens in a productive way.
So what do you think, you personally, because you have a very vast career of internal affairs and different approaches and working with school districts, and so you bring a lot to the table. What do you think you bring to the table that you can help improve the department?
I think due to all my experiences, that I think I bring, like you stated, a lot of experience in community relationship, training, retention, HR, all the important stuff that helps a department, gel and the community gel together. I think we need to more focus on recruiting, and we need to recruit the right type of officer. I currently decided to eliminate the 30 hours of college requirements. That way we could expand our pool of applicants, because we want to recruit from within the community. So I think if we eliminate that 30 hours of college and substitute it with 2 years of continuous work experience, I think that's great. I think there's value in having an education, but there's also value in having work experience. And a lot of the times, a lot of our community members, due to various reasons, they have to work, they have families, they can't afford to go to college, or the opportunity is not there. So I think by expanding our recruiting efforts and eliminating the 30 hours, I think we'll be able to recruit more members from the community who are interested in law enforcement. Another thing I bring to the table is I have a lot of tactical experience, and dealing with, reducing crime. I was the chief over the patrol division in Houston, and we had over 1,100 officers. And I covered over 300 square miles. So every community has a different problem when it comes to crime. Some areas has violent crime, some has property crimes. So I bring that experience to the table where I could work trying to reduce violent crime and also work with the community trying to reduce property crimes, crimes against society. And I think that's more important than violent crime, because crime is personal. Whether it's stealing a plant off your porch or you getting robbed at gunpoint, it's still personal. And I think I have the attitude and the ability to work with my officers and empower them to work with communities to solve those problems, especially quality of life problems. Because that's the biggest complaint. It's not the violent crime, but that happens. It's gonna happen. But quality of life issues is what the citizens normally complain about. And those things, in order to solve quality of life issues, you have to have problem solving skills. So I plan to empower my officers to initiate problem solving with the community members, because we can't, as a law enforcement agency, solve all problems. We need to work with the community, we need to work with private sectors, we need to work with our social services, we need to work with our city government, state government, and county government. All of us have to work together to solve problems.
Okay, and working with the community, what does that look like for you? Because that was something your predecessor really harped on as well, is trying to make that community connection. What do you see that as?
Well, Chief Kimball did a great job in establishing community relationships, and I plan to further that relationship. And things we have to do is that everything that the department does, everything that I have to do has to be intentional. We have to interact with the community on every opportunity we get, even for non-law enforcement events. It shouldn't be we only meet with the community when they have a problem, when they want to address the chief of police. We need to have continuous and conversations with the communities at all times. Something in Houston that we call the Positive Interaction Program, and I don't know how I'm going to try to implement it here in Killeen, but there's an area where communities throughout Houston, everybody has homeowners associations or community neighborhoods. So each community neighborhood homeowner association had a program where they meet with their patrol commander on a monthly basis to discuss the issues that they have. And then once a year, we meet as a large group. So right now, I'm trying to get with our community outreach unit to try to identify the community leaders in each area, because I know each neighborhood has, there's Nolanville, there's Clear Creek. Those areas have some type of representation. So I would like to set up and establish a positive intervention program where they meet with the leaders, commanders and above, to discuss the issues they have. So maybe you could help me with that. You can identify the community leaders or the community in neighborhoods. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly.
It depends on what you're talking about. I've been here for over a decade, so
they have like neighborhoods, Heritage Oaks, Y'all Ranch, different neighborhood associations. I would like to meet with them on a monthly basis, or at least the lieutenants and above, meet with them on a monthly basis so they could discuss their programs, their problems, so we could try to help them solve those problems. Like I said, everybody's problems is not the same.
No, I mean, north and south side of Killeen are completely different.
Exactly. So I assume the areas, neighborhoods on the north side of town are going to have homeless issues, narcotics issues. But on the west side of town, there might be burglary issues. So the intent of my proposal is to meet with each neighborhood association to discuss specifically what their concerns are, so we could have a targeted approach to their problems.
There's always been an issue, especially since George Floyd and everything else, especially working in Houston. I know you and your officers dealt with a lot of pushback.
Yes.
And a lot of that is transparency, especially around here. Not that Chief Kimball wasn't transparent. There's always gonna be that tension of why aren't they answering questions? Why aren't they doing that? What's your approach to being transparent, and what do you hope to do to further transparency and kind of break that stigma with the community?
All right. We need to open all lines of communication with community members that oppose us, and community members that support us. But we all have different ways to approach to reducing crime, and the main goal is that we all have to work collaboratively together to reduce crime. So I plan to meet with community members anytime that we need to meet with them. I plan to attend all events, whether it's law enforcement events or non-law enforcement events, with the community members. An example I did a homeless outreach program 2 Saturdays ago at Corbett Park, starts with an S, right downtown on the north side.
Condor Park.
No,
Condor?
No, I forgot the name of the street, but anyway.
Long Ranch, there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, well, that was an example of me trying to reach out with the community. I plan to meet with all the high-profile representatives. I met with LULAC this week. I'm meeting with the NAACP. I plan to meet with the ministers, a program that I like to start here. And I was talking to one of our recruiters this morning who's a minister in the community on the north side of town. That is the Police and Clergy Alliance. I like to start something like that where we work with our ministers together we go out, and an example is that we had a fatality during a traffic accident. Officers have to deliver death notices. It helps when you have a minister from that area accompanying us to help us deliver that message, because officers are not properly equipped or trained to deliver certain death messages. So I think a minister from that neighborhood and that community will be able to help us do that. I also plan to involve the community into our recruitment efforts. We have a program where, for an example, you're denied employment with the police department for various reasons, minor issues. So as an applicant, you didn't have a right to appeal. But now with the proposal that I'm gonna bring to the table is that you have a right to appeal, and that appeal is gonna be heard by members of the community. So they can make a recommendation, then I have the last say of whether we're gonna hire that person or not. So those are examples of us reaching out to community to have them become part of the department.
So you want to integrate the community more into the department?
Into the decision-making process, not just on the Citizens Review Board where we meet once a year. I want community members to be part of us on our everyday operations as much as possible. Another thing we have to do as a department is put all our policies and statistics online when it comes to use of force, racial profiling, internal affairs dispositions. All that stuff should be available online, and currently we're in the process Our PIO and I are in the process of revamping our webpage. It's going to take a few weeks, a few months to realign that. But that's something that I want to put out to the community. So the community should be able to see exactly why we're doing certain things. When it comes to, using force, or why we ask for a driver's license during traffic stops. All our policies are very transparent and should be available online. So we're working on revising those policies and putting them online so the citizens can view it. Hopefully in the near future, I'm trying to come up with some funding to put all our crime statistics online, live. Because right now, our reports are 30 days out. So they can review the stats, but it's 30 days old. And crime trends change constantly on a daily basis. So I want citizens to be able to review the stats live so they can make those decisions whether, if I see a spike of burglaries at the Killeen Mall, burglaries of motor vehicles, I'm not going to go to the Killeen Mall, or I'm going to take these precautions to safeguard my property. So those are the things that I'm looking at to involve the community more and be more transparent to our citizens.
Okay. What about if there's an incident that happens and you get people like me calling, and Ophelia knows that there's a lot of times I call and I'm like, I got to ask this question, I already know the answer. It's going to be no. But that's where a lot of the transparency issues happen. And as a citizen of Killeen, I'm excited for some of the ideas that you're trying, and hopefully they all work.
Yeah.
But what do you want the community to understand? Say you're not answering questions, or I understand how investigations work, but a lot of people don't. What do you plan to do in a situation like that?
Well, one thing, we need to make sure the media is going to be our partner. And that's something that Ophelia and I have spoke about earlier since I've been here, is to try to find ways to put out information on a more regular basis. And that's something that we're doing that right now. As a matter of fact, I think since I've been here, we put out about 6 or 7 press releases when normally we wouldn't put that information out. So we need to have established partnership with the media. And sometimes we're going to disagree, sometimes we're not. But when we can't release information, we're not going to just put out a blanket statement that we're not making any comments. Because a lot of the times when we can't give information is because we don't want to interfere with the investigation of the DA's office. But we have to tell you that. We can't just say, well, we're not making any comments. We got to tell you we're not making any comments because the case is pending and it's in the DA's office, or whatever the reason is. That communication has to be put out there. So you're going to see more communication from us on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram.
There has been a kind of roller coaster on crime rates around here. If you look at the stats and the flow charts, it goes like this. Yeah. Is there any new programs or anything that you want to instill other than, repeating yourself about working with the community? But is there any different approaches or anything that you bring from working a way worse crime area in Houston to here?
Yeah, right now we have something called the crime strategy meeting, and that's a good concept. But what we've been doing, what I've been noticing, we're discussing information that's old information. What we need to work on is increasing our data collection and collecting actionable intelligence, where an officer has that information, within the first hour of the crime or within the first 24 hours, so we could go ahead and act on that tip. It's great that you tell me that burglaries happened at the mall, or we had a robbery happen at this location that happened 30 days ago. But I can't do anything with information that happened 30 days ago. So we're trying to increase our data intelligence collecting capabilities and deploy it out to the officers in real time. So that's why in the next few months we're trying to we have the funding for it, but we're trying to come up with a real-time crime center. So as soon as we get that information that there's a robbery that occurred at one of our restaurants, that information has to go out to the officers immediately via text, via telephone, via the MDT, whatever methods that we have. And we also have to share that information countywide. So we all know criminals are transient. They're going to commit a robbery in Killeen, they're going to go to Corpus Cove or Harker Heights and commit the same robbery. So we have to be able to share intelligence. So actionable intelligence by analyzing real crime data at that time that the incident is occurring is going to be crucial. Another thing I need to do is empower our police officers to focus on proactive policing instead of preventive policing. We have to respond to citizens who call us in anytime they have to report a crime. I understand that. But we need to focus more on proactive policing. We need to identify areas where the real crime is happening. I have plenty of officers out on the streets. I have between 20 to 25 officers on the street. But using the data that we collect, I have to make sure that those resources are going to the area where the crime has actually happened. And then we have to empower the sergeants and lieutenants and officers to be more proactive in their approaches to addressing crime. So by using the data and being proactive, I think we will be able to reduce crime.
Are there any new programs or any approaches to, say, bringing in more mental health professionals, things like that, for calls like that? Some of the major issues that have been happening nationwide that every police department's really dealing with. But there's been issues here as well where a mental health call could have had a better professional instead of an officer who's not fully equipped to handle that kind of a call.
Yes, I spoke with Sergeant as part of my interview process, my assessment process. I met with CEU, that's a community engagement unit, Sergeant Angela Matthews, 2 weeks ago, and that's a program that we have in place that's being started hopefully by the end of August, where we're going to have 2 social workers assigned to the community engagement team, and they're going to be responding with us to calls for service, or we're going to bring homeless people or people with mental health issues or whatever issues, social issues that they need help with. We're going to bring them into our North PD facility so they can have a one-on-one session with our social workers. Because you all know, officers, we have CIT training and we're prepared to deal with mental health issues, but their specific expertise in dealing with other issues like substance abuse, mental health, drug abuse, a lot of things that police officers not equipped, or we shouldn't be equipped to do that. That's why we have to bring our community partners in, like social workers and psychologists, those personnel who are equipped. So those 2 people are going to be embedded in with our community engagement unit. It's a grant program right now. Hopefully it's a 2-year grant program. Hopefully we get extended, but it all depends on funding. I also plan to assign another officer to a homeless outreach team. Officer Krause does a great job with the people downtown, but we need another officer to help him because a one-man team is not a team. So we need at least 2 people. So I plan to put those resources in to our community outreach team, and specifically our homeless outreach person. I was the chief of police in HISD, and we had a program called TAPS, and TAPS is a 10-week mentorship program where police officers are teaching the class to middle school and high school students, and it's not just about drug abuse or anything like that. It's about gang awareness, social media awareness, dating violence, life skills, life decision-making skills. And those are great programs, and it gives us an opportunity to become mentors to the kids, and we could partner with KISD and KPD. We could be the mentors and teach that. That's something I'm trying to meet with the chief of police with KISD to implement that program. Another program I want to bring to Killeen is the Handle with Care program. A lot of the time our kids, I don't know if you're aware of that program, a lot of the time our kids are either victims or witnesses to traumatic events that occur off campus. And the notion that whatever happens off campus doesn't go on campus is a lie. Kids bring trauma to campus, and sometimes that trauma leads to them acting out in school. And the school administrators don't know what's going on because they don't know that their parent was arrested for domestic violence, their dad was arrested for DWI. They don't know that. But with this Handle with Care program, anytime a KPD officer is dispatched to a scene where a child is involved and goes to one of our schools, we inform the school administrators of what's going on. That way the school administrator could apply the appropriate services that they need to the child. It's a great program. We started off as a trial program in HISD, and right now it's a pilot program, but it's a great program that we could use. It's been tried in San Antonio PD and San Antonio Independent School District. It's been very successful. I think those are the programs we need to bring to Killeen. So again, I'm gonna work with KISD to initiate that program.
Okay. So yeah, letting them know that the kid's been through something
Exactly,
definitely helps.
but they don't know. They can't help it. And that's when the kid is acting out, fighting in school, being aggressive or being withdrawn. It's because of the trauma that occurs off campus that they're not aware of.
And you mentioned earlier that, sometimes you don't need to arrest them to handle the situation.
Exactly. Adolescent behavior, when you and I and Ophelia probably went to school, we got into a little scuffle at school, we weren't, the police wasn't called, the principal handled it.
Yep.
So the student code of conduct and the way it's structured needs to ensure that not every misbehavior is criminal behavior. It's something that should be handled at the lowest level possible, and that's done by the school administrators. So the KISD needs to look at their student code of conduct to make sure that they don't call law enforcement for everything that happens at the campus. They need to handle that themselves, and they have the expertise to handle adolescent behavior.
What do you think is the biggest issue you want to tackle first in this area after you get your 30-day assessment and everything?
The biggest issue I want to tackle is the violent crime, because on a nightly basis, there's always a shooting or assault, and it's mostly juvenile suspects. So that's something that we need to get under control and work on, and working with the community members, with our ministers, with our police officers, giving them with our school administrators. I think we all work together, we could stem the violence, especially when it comes with youth violence. It's very important to focus on youth violence because that's where most of the crime originates from. And a lot of times it's adolescent behavior that gets out of control because they don't know how to deal with their emotional feelings as a 14-year-old. The worst thing in the world is social media, because everybody has a cell phone, and a lot of vendettas and threats are made on social media. So we need to find a way where we could reach those kids before they react to some social media threat. So I think that's something that we need to work on. So that's going to be my focus, working on violent crime, specifically with juvenile suspects.
Okay. Yeah, I miss the days when people could just say what they wanted to your face and then handle it there without.
Right.
People say all kinds of stuff online because they think nothing's going to happen. So what do you want both the community and the veteran community to understand about who you are as a person?
I want the community and the veterans community to understand that I'm a servant leader. I'm here for you. I will sit here and listen to you every day of the week. If I need to come in on Saturday, Sunday, I don't mind doing it. If you need the police department to show up to one of your events, please reach out to us. I'm available. My command staff is available. We're here to serve you, and that's what I want the community to know, that the police department, Killeen Police Department, is a great department full of young officers who have very similar experience that the community has. We all want to do good things for our communities, and with our background, especially with our military veterans that have that experience, I think we could be great community partners. We just need to work with each other and make the interactions with us a little bit more frequent than what they normally are.
Okay. Does that include things like holding officers accountable? Because accountability is a big part of it.
Definitely. I'm working on revamping our internal affairs system to make it a little bit more transparent for the community to understand why we make certain decisions. And the community needs to know that once you file a complaint, that is taken care of. And the only way to do that is putting on those stats online. And when you file a complaint, you deserve a response by us on the disposition, whether we sustained the complaint or we founded it, and we give you a reason why we made the decision that we made during that ID process. So every citizen who files a complaint is going to receive feedback from us as soon as the investigation is complete. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer to complete an investigation, depending on the complexity of the investigation. But most complaints get adjudicated within 90 days internally. So the community deserves feedback when it comes to accountability and transparency. And again, we're going to put all those stats online on a monthly basis so the community can have confidence in us, knowing that we take their complaints seriously and we do something about it. And that comes from me. That's my responsibility. And from my background, I've been very transparent. I worked IED 5 to 6 years as a sergeant and as a lieutenant, so I know the importance of conducting quality internal affairs investigations, to holding officers accountable. And officers want to be held accountable, because one thing that officers hate is bad officers, because it makes it harder on everybody, on us internally and on the community. So we try to weed out the corrupt officers, the officers that are not behaving to our department standards, because we don't want to harm the community.